Hello there. I'm asking you what if the Jedi built the Death Star? This is not the Jedi way at all. This is 100% not the Jedi way at all. Anyway, I'm reacting to what if the Jedi built the Death Star. This is from Star Wars Quill. This is Big Y. They're used by the Empire, but why would a Jedi need the Death Star? Well, let's find out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And again, I'll have the channel in the description below. So you can watch the original video for yourself. But again, why would a Jedi need a Death Star? This is like literally not the Jedi way at all.
What if the Jedi had built the Death Star? What would happen then? Let's find out. So in this alternate timeline, everything would be the same as in the original timeline, right up until the events of Attack of the Clones. This deviation occurs due to Padme being married when she arrives on Coruscant. And in this timeline as well, when Padme arrives on Coruscant to vote on the Military Creation Act, an attempt would be made on her life. Padme survives it, and Obi-Wan and Anakin are put in charge of investigating the attack. Obi-Wan will lead the investigation, while Anakin is tasked with safely transporting Padme back to Naboo. Just like in the original timeline, both master and apprentice would accept their duties. However, unlike in the original timeline, Anakin and Padme would not develop a relationship, because Padme was married, and Anakin immediately shoved his romantic notions aside upon learning that Padme was married. As the transport shuttle they were on sailed through the cosmos towards the lush planet of Naboo, Anakin and Padme exchanged stories of their lives since their last meeting a decade ago. Padme talked about her challenging but fulfilling role as a senator, while Anakin shared his journey and struggles as a Jedi. Upon arriving on Naboo, they were warmly received by Padme's husband, Rush Clovis. Anakin felt a tinge of jealousy upon seeing Padme and Clovis together, but he quickly masked it with his duty-bound stoicism. And then, in a bid to escape potential threats and to find solace in seclusion, Padme, Clovis, and Anakin relocated to Varikino, a lake retreat known for its serene beauty and strong emotional connections to Padme's earlier life. The pastoral landscapes and tranquil waters served as a stark contrast to the brewing storm in Anakin's psyche, because amidst this apparent peace, Anakin's sleep was tormented by visions of his mother, Shmi, in agonizing pain, a haunting premonition that he had been dismissing for too long. But finally, just like in the original timeline, the weight of these visions became unbearable. Anakin confided in Padme about his torment. Ever empathetic, Padme revealed to Anakin her past attempts to liberate Shmi from slavery on Tatooine. Padme explained to Anakin that, despite deploying her finest agents, she had failed to locate Anakin's mother. So side note, this actually happens in the original timeline as well. After becoming a senator, Padme had sent her agents to Tatooine to free Anakin's mother, but they had failed to find her, because Pig Lars had by this point taken Shmi away from Watto. This is revealed in the Vader comics. Anyways, coming back to the story, Padme shared with Clovis what Anakin was going through and how he needed to depart for Tatooine. And Clovis too was understanding enough to see what Anakin was going through. And so, Padme and Clovis provided Anakin with a Naboo star skiff, a sleek vessel ideal for a swift and solitary journey. As Anakin prepared to leave, Padme expressed her deep regret over not being able to help Anakin sooner, and Clovis, standing beside Padme, offered Anakin a look of sympathy. Grateful and touched by their understanding and support, Anakin thanked them both, and then Anakin got into the star skiff and set coordinates to Tatooine. Arriving on Tatooine alone, Anakin's heart was heavy with foreboding, yet determined to uncover the fate of his mother. Under the scorching twin suns of the desert planet, Anakin sought out Watto, the Toydarian junk dealer who had once owned him and his mother. The encounter was terse. Watto, now diminished by poor fortune, grudgingly directed Anakin to Klieg Lars, the moisture farmer who had freed and married Shmi. And then shortly thereafter, upon reaching the Lars homestead, Anakin met Owen Lars and his girlfriend, Beru. Klieg Lars, bound to a hover chair and marked by grief, recounted the harrowing tale of Shmi's abduction by Tusken raiders, roughly a month prior. Klieg went over how he and 30 others tried to rescue Shmi, but that their rescue attempt was foiled by a trap set by the Tusken raiders. So side note, this trap that killed most women after Shmi was pretty simple. It was a really sharp wire that the Tuscans had tied in the path they knew the monster farmers would come after them. This wire was tied at roughly neck height of a human riding a speeder. And so, Klieg and his friends didn't notice the wire, and their speeders flew into them at high speeds, killing most of them instantly. But anyways, even after hearing of all this, Anakin refused to give up on his mother. He borrowed a large family speeder and set out across the harsh landscape, navigating the treacherous terrain until he located the Tuscan camp. And there, with the Force as his guide, Anakin found Shmi in a tender sorrow, barely alive, shackled and weathered by the sun and the sand. In her final moments, it looked as if she was trying to tell Anakin how much she loved him, but before she could do that, life left her. And Anakin felt as though he wasn't strong enough to have saved her. And overcome by grief and fury, Anakin's response was swift and merciless. He unleashed the full extent of his powers, fueled by a rage that knew no distinction between combatant and non-combatant. Every Tuscan, man, woman, and child fell before Anakin's unleashed anger, leaving the camp in ruins and silence. Returning to the Lars homestead with Shmi's body, Anakin joined Klieg, Owen, and Beru in a somber funeral under the setting suns. And as they paid their respects, the solemnity was pierced by an urgent transmission from Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin's master. So, to explain what this transmission was about, let us now go back to what Obi-Wan was up to during this time. So after Anakin departed with Padme to Naboo, Obi-Wan continued his investigation into the attack on Padme. His inquiries, with the assistance of Dexter Jetster, a diner owner and old friend, led Obi-Wan to the watery planet of Kamino. And there, amidst the relentless rain and towering ocean waves, Obi-Wan uncovered the existence of a clandestine clone army ordered secretly for the Republic. Furthermore, he encountered Jango Fett, the bounty hunter whose genetic template was used for the clones, and the individual who most likely executed Zam Wesell before she could divulge who hired her to take out Padme. After a tense and brief confrontation with Jango at the landing platform, where the pouring rain mirrored the intensity of their duel, Obi-Wan discreetly placed a tracking device on Jango's ship, the Slave One. He then followed the bounty hunter to the rocky, arid world of Geonosis, and then, sneaking into a Geonosian spire, Obi-Wan eavesdropped on a secretive meeting between Count Dooku and Newt Gunray. The two were discussing plans to assassinate Senator Padme Amidala and the creation of a massive droid army for the Separatist Alliance. The looming shadows of the spire and the mechanical sounds of droid construction created an ominous backdrop to this discovery. After recording crucial evidence of this conspiracy, Obi-Wan stepped outside the structure, into the harsh, red sands of Geonosis, only to find that his long-range transmitter was damaged. And because of this, his initial attempt to send a comprehensive report to Coruscant failed. With limited options, Obi-Wan decided to contact Anakin, believing him to still be on Naboo with Padme. He does this because Naboo was closer, and he could reach Anakin without needing a long-range transmitter. However, Obi-Wan was surprised to learn that Anakin was on Tatooine. But despite this, he sent the transmission to Anakin, hoping it would reach him. And at the somber moment of Shmi Skywalker's funeral on Tatooine, amidst the twin suns setting and casting long shadows over the mornings, Anakin received Obi-Wan's transmission, which he answered after excusing himself to his star skiff. Obi-Wan began the message by telling Anakin that
ain't something you unintentionally taught your pets.
I have no idea. No. A cat and two dogs? No.
that
Why?
Obi-Wan's long-range transmitter has been damaged, and that he needs Anakin to reroute the transmission to Coruscant. Anakin does so, and as a result, the transmission reaches the Jedi and the Chancellor. And in this transmission, Obi-Wan would explain to the Chancellor and to the Jedi of everything he found on Geonosis. But then the transmission would be abruptly cut off as Obi-Wan came under attack by a droid. The video feed jarringly ending with the glimpse of Obi-Wan grappling with unseen assailants. Anakin, Jedi, and the Chancellor were watching this, and after Obi-Wan came under attack, Mace Windu told Anakin to stay put, emphasizing that Anakin's primary priority remained the protection of the Senator. Mace Windu said this, being unaware of the fact that Anakin was nowhere near Padme at this point, something which Anakin did not bother correcting. He simply bowed to Mace Windu and entered the transmission. And then, having made his way out of the Naboo starship, Anakin sat alone outside the Lars homestead, the skies of Tatooine stretching vast and unending above him. Unlike in the original timeline, where Padme had urged Anakin to aid Obi-Wan, in this timeline Anakin found himself alone with his thoughts, wrestling with the decision of whether to rush to Geonosis. And in the end, Anakin decided to stay put, telling himself that Obi-Wan and the Jedi can handle whatever is happening on Geonosis. So beyond what Mace Windu told him, another reason why Anakin would be hesitant to go to Geonosis would be that he harbored a quiet resentment towards the Jedi and towards Obi-Wan for dismissing his premonitions about his mother, which ultimately was a misunderstanding because, side note, Anakin had never told Obi-Wan that he saw his mother dying, just that he'd been having visions or dreams about her. This is explained in the book Wild Space by Karen Miller, in which there's a scene that takes place after Attack of the Clones, where Anakin tells Obi-Wan that his mother is dead, following which Obi-Wan tells Anakin that had he known that Anakin saw her die, he would have definitely done something. Anyways, point is, with Padme not being there to force Anakin to go to Geonosis, he doesn't. Instead, he gets out of the Naboo starskiff and makes his way back to the Lars homestead. Meanwhile, on Geonosis, the situation escalated rapidly. Obi-Wan was confronted by Count Dooku, the leader of the Separatist Alliance, who revealed a chilling truth to Obi-Wan. A Sith Lord by the name of Darth Sidious controls the Republic. Dooku then asked Obi-Wan to join him, and that together they can destroy Sidious. But Obi-Wan, steadfast in his loyalty to the Jedi and the Republic, refused to believe Count Dooku's claims. And as a result, soon after, he was taken to a cavernous fighting pit, designed to be an arena of his demise at the claws of savage Geonosian beasts. The execution was said to be a spectacle, but as Obi-Wan awaited his fate, the arena erupted into chaos with the sudden arrival of Jedi reinforcements. The battle was fierce. Lightsabers clashed against the relentless march of droid soldiers, and many Jedi fell. But then, just as the situation seemed dire, Master Yoda arrived with the newly authorized clone army from Kamino. So side note, this is possible because in this timeline as well, Padme had left Jar Jar to speak for her. And Jar Jar, after being manipulated by Palpatine, ended up proposing to the Senate that they grant Chancellor Palpatine emergency powers so that he may approve the Military Creation Act and authorize the use of the clone army. And so Palpatine did just that, and as a result, Yoda is now here on Geonosis with the newly approved Grand Army of the Republic. And as quickly as the clones arrived, the tides of the battle turned, as the clones, with their coordinated precision, overwhelmed the droid forces. In the midst of the fray, Dooku, realizing the battle was lost, conferred with Poggle the Lesser, one of the leaders of the Geonosians. And then, just like in the original timeline, Poggle handed Dooku the plans for a super weapon, the Death Star, intending for Dooku to safeguard the plans from the Jedi and transport them to Coruscant. And as all the Separatist leaders, including Dooku, began to flee from Geonosis, Obi-Wan and Mace Windu in Anakin's absence pursued Dooku to a towering Geonosian spire. Unlike Anakin, who had charged in to fight Dooku recklessly, Mace Windu's calculated approach alongside Obi-Wan made them a formidable duo against Dooku. The confrontation reached its climax as Yoda joined, tipping the scales decisively. In a desperate move, Dooku attempted to summon Sith Lightning, but the combined might of 3 Jedi Masters...
I have my own Death Star plans. There you go. There you go. This is my Death Star plans.
overpowered Dooku, and Yoda, seizing a moment of weakness, disarmed Dooku, quite literally, by severing Dooku's hands. And at this crucial juncture, clone troopers also swarmed into the spire, securing Dooku's capture. And then, as Dooku was being carried away by clones, Yoda noticed something, a small circular device which fell from Dooku's belt. No one else but Yoda had noticed it, and so Yoda quietly approached this device, and he picked it up. Yoda didn't know what it was, but he could feel that this device in his grip was somehow important, and so Yoda pocketed it, with the intention of getting it analyzed by the droids within the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. And then later, with Count Dooku securely detained and transported to a high-security prison on Coruscant, the Jedi Council faced a perplexing situation. Dooku, while in custody, remained enigmatically silent on many matters. He only reiterated what he had previously shared with Obi-Wan Kenobi, that a Sith Lord by the name of Darth Sidious controlled the Galactic Republic. But beyond these cryptic revelations, Dooku refused to divulge anything further. leaving the Jedi to ponder the veracity and implications of his claims. And as the wheels of justice began to turn for Dooku, Yoda, deeply concerned about the device recovered from Dooku, had it analyzed by the most sophisticated droids within the Jedi Temple. The atmosphere in the Temple lab was tense. The usual serene tranquility was replaced by a sense of urgency as the droids worked diligently to decipher the mysterious device that Yoda had brought them. Finally, the analysis was complete, and Yoda was provided the nature of the device and what was contained within it. And soon after having this data revealed to him, Yoda convened a clandestine meeting with Masters Windu and Obi-Wan. Here, Yoda revealed to them what he had found from Dooku's device, a detailed schematic of a terrifying superweapon capable of destroying entire planets, codenamed the Death Star. Understanding the gravity of this discovery, the Jedi Masters deliberated on their next steps. The notion that Dooku might not have been lying about Sidious's influence or the Republic led them to a precarious decision. If indeed Sidious had infiltrated the highest levels of the Republic, surrendering the Death Star plans to the Senate could inadvertently place the superweapon in Sidious's own hands, in the hands of the Sith. So, complicating this matter was the Jedi's lack of knowledge about the true relationship between Dooku and Sidious. They were unaware that the two were allies, not adversaries. So, based on what they know, the Jedi do have reason to believe that Dooku was fighting the Republic because the Sith, Darth Sidious, controlled it. Yoda, always contemplative and strategic, voiced a thought that had begun to take root in his mind. Consider we must, if this weapon Dooku planned to design to be used against Sidious, potentially useful in our fighting against the dark side, this could be. His words hung in the air, dense with the weight of moral implications. The Jedi were keepers of the peace, not warriors who sought out weapons of mass destruction, yet the unique circumstances presented a paradox that was difficult to dismiss. Yoda, bearing the weight of his wisdom and years, proposed a cautious approach. He suggested that the weapon should be constructed as a deterrent, a last resort never intended for use unless absolutely necessary. If the Sith, under the Jedi's watch, had infiltrated the highest echelons of power within the Republic, then there is no telling what the Sith has planned. This was Yoda's reasoning behind it. Further, Yoda also summarized that the Sith Lord Sidious might be plotting his plans, expecting the Jedi to act a certain way. Sidious may have believed that he has the Jedi and their methods of operation figured out. So if the Jedi were to come out on top, they had to do something that Sidious would not anticipate. This is also a thought that had dwelled within Yoda's mind at this point. But finally, Yoda realized that the gravity of the situation warranted full consultation. Thus Yoda called a council meeting and explained to the entire Jedi Council what he had learned and what he had considered doing. The council chamber of the Jedi Temple, a room typically filled with serene deliberations, became the scene of intense debate following this. The Jedi Masters debated not just the strategic implications, but the moral repercussions of constructing such a weapon, even as a worst-case scenario. After a deeply contentious debate, marked by a barely favorable vote, the council decided to proceed with the construction of the Death Star. This decision was predicated on the hope that the weapon would never need to be used, serving solely as a powerful deterrent against potential Sith aggression. And it was also decided that, to ensure the utmost secrecy, the construction would take place in the remote, unknown regions, a sector of space that was largely uncharted and outside the direct oversight of the Galactic Republic. The Jedi Order, which by this point had stood for over 25,000 years, knew of many such secretive locations in the galaxy. Yoda was appointed to oversee the project, justified by his extensive wisdom and experience. Additionally, his advanced age and respected status provided a convenient rationale for his prolonged absence from Coruscant, should any justifications be needed for that. And so, under the guise of seeking meditation and reflecting on the Force in his later years, Yoda could direct the construction efforts without raising suspicions. The site of this construction was a stark contrast to the bustling activity of typical Republic bases. It was a secluded expanse, surrounded by nebulae and sparse asteroid fields, that shielded the project from prying eyes. The work environment was also intensely secretive, with clones and droids programmed for high confidentiality. These clones, selected for their unwavering loyalty and trained to follow orders without question, worked alongside a cadre of droids, ensuring efficient progress without leaks of information. And on top of that, to finish construction as quickly as possible, Yoda utilized an ancient Jedi technique known as battle meditation. So side note, battle meditation was a force ability that considerably boosted the morale, stamina, and overall battle prowess of an individual's allies, while simultaneously reducing the opposition's combat effectiveness by eroding their will to fight. So right here, Yoda would be utilizing a variation of this meditation technique. He wasn't fighting a battle, but this meditation by Yoda did allow the clones, who numbered in the thousands, to work a lot faster and effectively. This force ability enhanced the collaborative spirit and diligence of the entire workforce, imprinting upon them a deeper sense of purpose and commitment to the secrecy of the project. And so, as the structure of the Death Star began to take form, its massive scale juxtaposed against the desolate backdrop of the unknown regions, the Jedi overseeing the project couldn't help but feel the weight of the paradox they were constructing.
The question is, since the Republic became the Empire, but the Empire is like all gray and black and all that, the only colors that were in the Empire were like the Royal Guards and the Palpatine invaded lightsaber. So how the Death Star gonna work for the Jedi? They gonna like color the Death Star, or keep it as like a dark moon color, like in the original trailer, in the original movie? How the Death Star is gray, like a gray and black color, or are they gonna like color it, I guess, for the Republic? I don't know. Let's see. Or I think they're gonna keep it the way it is, like don't color it. I don't know. Let's find it out.
A weapon of peace, yet capable of unimaginable destruction. It symbolized the dire straits into which the galaxy had been thrust. Also, side note, this Death Star would be smaller than the one that Palpatine had created in the original timeline. And that is...
Oh yeah, it's smaller than that. Okay. Actually, how is... I'm gonna destroy it.
because to build the Death Star in its original grand design would take time. Time which they did not have. And so they opted for a smaller, albeit just as capable design, one which the clone forces and the droids could effectively build within an acceptable frame of time. And also, in case you're wondering what happened to Anakin, after he rerouted Kenobi's message on Tatooine, well, Anakin considered leaving the Jedi Order and staying on Tatooine. But he soon realized that Tatooine reminded him too much of how he failed to save his mother. And so, a day after his mother's funeral, Anakin, after saying his farewells to the Lars family, left Tatooine and went back to Naboo. But he didn't go alone. Owen Lars had insisted that Anakin take C-3PO with him, which Anakin himself had built years ago. Grateful and feeling a connection to his past through the droid, Anakin agreed and departed for Naboo, carrying with him the burdens of his unresolved grief. So side note, as evidenced by the novelization for Attack of the Clones, Owen Lars does tell Anakin to take 3PO with him. So that is why 3PO ends up with Anakin. He didn't just steal him. And upon his return to Naboo, Anakin was received with understanding by Padme and her husband. And further, they hadn't told the Jedi that Anakin had left on his detour. And Anakin, concealing the full truth of his mother's fate, assured them that she was safe, preferring not to delve into the painful details of his loss. His heart heavy, he spent a few more days on Naboo, trying to find solace in the beauty of the planet and the comfort of friends who, while concerned, respected his reticence. However, soon enough, after Count Dooku was captured, Anakin was called back to Coruscant as there was no further threat to Padme's life. And upon his return, Obi-Wan Kenobi briefed Anakin on the dire developments that had transpired in his absence. Count Dooku was arrested, but the Clone Wars had still begun. This happened because even though Dooku was gone, Grievous was still there, and Sidious made him the leader of the Separatist Alliance. And Sidious himself decided to take a more active role in this timeline in Dooku's absence. And so the Clone Wars began, and not long into the Clone Wars, Anakin was knighted, and Ahsoka Tano became his apprentice. This period marked a new chapter in Anakin's life, characterized by a closer bond with Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, and the absence of romantic entanglements. Meanwhile, the Death Star project under Master Yoda's guidance progressed swiftly and secretly in the unknown regions, and due to its secret nature, only members of the Jedi High Council knew of the project's existence. Also, to maintain the secrecy of troop movements to the unknown regions, the Jedi fabricated several possible excuses. They claimed that these units were engaged in exploratory missions, testing new equipments, or participating in top-secret drills that were crucial for the Republic's strategy against the Separatists. These excuses were rarely questioned given the Jedi's authority over military operations. Also, in this altered timeline, Palpatine observed Anakin's trajectory with keen interest. Without Padme as a pivotal influence in Anakin's life, Palpatine devised a new scheme. Instead of manipulating Anakin to the dark side, he planned to capture Anakin and to utilize the ancient Sith technique of essence transfer to transfer Palpatine's consciousness into Anakin's body, thus becoming the Chosen One himself. This insidious plan was motivated by Palpatine's desire to harness Anakin's unparalleled connection to the Force and secure his rule permanently. And in this manner, the Clone Wars continued to ravage across the galaxy, with several events unfolding with eerie similarities to the original timeline. Ahsoka Tano, Anakin's apprentice, faced trials that tested her faith in the Jedi Order. Similarly to the original timeline, she was framed for a bombing by Barry Sylvie, a fellow Jedi disillusioned with the war, and the Jedi's role in it. Despite Anakin's efforts to clear her name, the damage to Ahsoka's trust in the Order was irreparable, leading to her departure. This event left a deep impact on Anakin. Similarly, the incident involving Clone Trooper Hives, who uncovered the insidious nature of the inhibitor chips, unfolded tragically. Hives' desperate attempts to warn the Jedi were ultimately dismissed as paranoia, exacerbated by his chip-induced deterioration, and Palpatine deftly manipulated the situation, resulting in Fives being silenced before he could expose the grand conspiracy. All was proceeding as Palpatine planned, or so he believed, given the information that was available to him, because as these crises unfolded, the construction of the Jedi superweapon, the Death Star, was progressing at a rapid pace. Meanwhile, the endgame of the Clone Wars approached. Chancellor Palpatine, having manipulated events from the shadows, orchestrated Grievous's location to be discovered by the Republic. In this altered timeline, it was Mace Windu, not Obi-Wan Kenobi, who ended up being tasked with eliminating Separatist leader. Accompanied by a team of Jedi and clones, Mace confronted Grievous on Utapau, a desolate world marked by deep sinkholes and rugged terrain that provided a dramatic backdrop to their confrontation. Back on Coruscant, Anakin and Obi-Wan were stationed at the Jedi Temple, overseeing the war efforts. And soon after Mace Windu had departed, the news of Grievous's death came to Obi-Wan and Anakin via a secure transmission. And Anakin, feeling a turbulent mix of relief and foreboding, reported the significant development to Chancellor Palpatine, who even in this timeline Anakin viewed as sort of a father figure. This meeting became pivotal, as Palpatine chose this moment to subtly reveal his identity as Darth Sidious to Anakin. It was finally time to destroy the Jedi Order and bring forth the Empire. This was the only thought going through Palpatine's mind at this point. Conflicted by his loyalty to the man who had been like a father to him and his duty to the Jedi, Anakin left Palpatine's office in turmoil. The Coruscant skyline loomed over him as he crossed the Covanopolis, his towering structures casting long shadows that mirrored his inner conflict. The air was thick with electric tension of the impending storm, a palpable reflection of the galaxy on the brink of monumental change. As Anakin Skywalker returned to the Jedi Temple, his mind was tumultuous with the knowledge of Chancellor Palpatine's true identity. He quickly found Obi-Wan amidst the ancient and tribal halls of the temple, and without hesitation, Anakin shared the disturbing revelation. Obi-Wan, grasping the gravity of the situation, acted swiftly, initiating a secure transmission to the unknown regions, where Master Yoda oversaw the Death Star's construction. The recorded message that Obi-Wan sent was urgent. The Sith Lord had been uncovered as the leader of the Republic. Simultaneously, Shock the Saesee-Tiin, Agent Kolar, and Kit Fisto were briefed and prepared to confront Palpatine. Anakin, feeling a surge of responsibility and conflict, requested to join them. However, considering his close ties with Palpatine, the Masters convinced him that his presence would only complicate the mission, and reluctantly, Anakin agreed to stay behind, reassured by Obi-Wan that all things would proceed without issue. And also, since Padme is not involved in this timeline, Anakin, though wanting Palpatine to stay alive, has no reason to risk everything to keep Palpatine alive. And so, he waited in the Jedi Temple along with Obi-Wan as the Masters went to arrest the Sith Lord Sidious. The Jedi Temple on Coruscant had stood for over 25,000 years, witnessing countless threats but never yielding. In anticipation of Palpatine's potential counterstrike, Anakin and Obi-Wan activated the temple's lockdown procedures, a series of robust security measures that sealed the temple, making it an impenetrable fortress. So side note, these security measures had also been engaged in the original timeline as well, but Anakin was able to get these laws lifted, which wouldn't be happening in this timeline. Anyways, as the four Jedi Masters confronted Palpatine in his office, the scene unfolded with tragic familiarity. The swift and ferocious duel escalated rapidly. Shakti, demonstrating her formidable skills, managed to withstand Palpatine's assault the longest. However, in a desperate move, Palpatine shattered the office window with a powerful force push, sending Shakti tumbling into the Coruscant skyline. And with Shakti incapacitated and the other Master slain, Palpatine seized the moment to execute Order 66. The Jedi Masters had given him the last thing he needed to execute the order: the ability to accuse the Jedi of treason. Across the galaxy, clones turned on their Jedi generals with chilling efficiency. On Coruscant, their betrayal was immediate. Within the temple, a few clones attempted to carry out the order, but they were quickly neutralized by the Jedi. And through these slain clones, the Jedi were able to learn that right before the clones turned on the Jedi, they had received a transmission directly from the office of the Supreme Chancellor, a transmission that said, "Execute Order 66. And through this, the Jedi were able to quickly discern that the reason the clones turned so easily was due to their inhibitor chips. This was exactly the scenario that Fives had tried to warn them about, Anakin realized. But, pushing all this regret out of his mind, Anakin, Obi-Wan, and the other Jedi prepared to defend the temple, if the clones made their way in. Because outside, legions of clone troopers, led by Commander Appo, marched towards the temple. Their blaster fires and explosives battered the ancient edifice. But the lockdown held, the temple's defenses preventing any entry. In the midst of the chaos, Anakin's concern for Master Yoda grew, because, side note, Anakin never knew about the Death Star project. The Jedi Council didn't feel it would be wise to share that with Anakin, as Anakin was quite close to Palpatine. And so, when Anakin asked Obi-Wan at this point if Master Yoda had responded, Obi-Wan's response was tinged with uncertainty. "There is no response," he admitted, the silence from Yoda ominous, leaving Obi-Wan to wonder if even Yoda had fallen victim to Palpatine. Meanwhile, as the siege of the Jedi Temple continued under the cold glare of Coruscant's artificial lights, Chancellor Palpatine stood alone in his expansive office, observing the distant temple through a large, shattered window, a stark reminder of the fierce duel that had just unfolded. The night sky, typically ablaze with the constant traffic of airspeeders and the vibrant neon of city life, was intermittently lit by fiery explosions echoing from the temple's direction. The sounds of battle were muffled by the distance, but the occasional deep rumble of a larger blast reached his ears. Each thud was a grim percussion in the symphony of what Palpatine believed was the final act of the Jedi Order. And then Palpatine initiated communication with a clone commander who was leading the assault on the temple. "Have you breached the temple?" Palpatine asked. "Not yet, Lord Sidious. But we'll get through. We just need some time," the clone responded. "Continue the assault, and when you breach the temple, destroy all Jedi you see, except for General Skywalker. Only use stun settings on him. We need him alive." The clone commander agreed, and then Palpatine entered the transmission. As the hologram faded, Palpatine settled back into his chair, a thin smile playing across his lips. He was confident that soon the temple would fall, and with it, the last stronghold of the Jedi. But just as he was savoring his anticipated victory, a prickling sense of alarm coursed through him. Something potent and menacing was approaching, though its origin eluded Palpatine. He closed his eyes, extending his awareness to the Force, searching the currents of energy that flowed through the galaxy. His senses stretched outwards, and then he felt a disturbance, a ripple of something powerful and unfamiliar, something that didn't fit his design. With a sense of mounting unease, Palpatine rose and walked to the window, peering into the night sky of Coruscant. And there, against the backdrop of the city's endless lights, a new and imposing form had emerged. It was a massive, partially completed structure that hung ominously in the air. Its metallic surface caught the sunlight from the distant horizon, reflecting it like a celestial body, yet it was no moon. Its appearance was artificial and terrifying, segments of exposed framework and incomplete panels giving it a skeletal, foreboding look. Palpatine's mind raced as he observed this structure. It took him moments to connect the dots. The structure bore a striking resemblance to the superweapon that Count Dooku had once discussed. The plans to the superweapon which Dooku carried with him, which Palpatine had assumed were destroyed or lost during Dooku's capture, apparently had not only survived, but had also been acted upon. Shock and realization dawned on him. The Jedi must have taken those plans and constructed this weapon, something that Palpatine never expected them to do. As the implications settled in, Palpatine felt a surge of anger and fear. The Jedi, whom he had always painted as being predictable and weak, had built a weapon of mass destruction. This realization was a bitter pill, and for a moment he stood transfixed, his usual composure shaken by the audacity of the Jedi's plan. So a short while prior to this, in the remote depths of the unknown regions, Yoda stood within the command center of the Death Star, surrounded by the hum of consoles and the soft glow of screens. The Jedi Master had enforced stringent security protocols from the beginning of the construction project. All incoming communications were to be recorded transmissions only, which he, Yoda, would review before deciding on whether to initiate a live communication channel. This measure was crucial to maintaining the secrecy and security of the Death Star, isolating it from potential leaks or espionage. And it was following all the security procedures that the first critical transmission arrived from Coruscant, a recorded message encoded with urgency. And upon decoding the message, Yoda was greeted by the form of Obi-Wan Kenobi, where Obi-Wan revealed the harrowing truth of Chancellor Palpatine's identity as Darth Sidious, and how the Jedi Masters, Shakti, Kit Fisto, AC-10, and Agent Kolar are now on their way to arrest Palpatine. Yoda listened intently, his features tightening with concern. His wisdom told him that the unfolding events might be a trap laid by Sidious, a snare that could jeopardize the entire Jedi Order. But before he could process all this information fully, another transmission came in from Coruscant. It was again from Obi-Wan, whose voice, usually calm, now conveyed a desperate plea for caution. Master Yoda, the clones have turned on us. We don't know how it happened, but one moment they were our allies, and the next they were not. The only thing we know for certain is that, galaxy-wide, the clones were all sent a transmission from Palpatine's office which instructed them to execute Order 66. That was the last thing they received before deciding to turn on our order. Obi-Wan then continued with a hint of fear in his tone. We suspect this might be due to the inhibitor chips that the clones have inside their heads. The temple's defenses are holding for now, but we don't know how much longer we can hold. We might end up needing to use the weapon after all. May the Force guide us all, Master Yoda, Obi-Wan said before the transmission ended. The gravity of this message weighed heavily on Yoda. Although his instincts was to reach out and establish a live connection for more details, he restrained himself. The possibility that any communication could be intercepted by Sidious was too great a risk, especially under the current treacherous circumstances. As Yoda stood at the command center of the Death Star, his mind was a tumult of possibilities and forewarnings. The stark, utilitarian interior of the Death Star command center was a far cry from the ornate architecture of the Jedi Temple, yet it now served as a bastion against the darkening galaxy. Also, the clones within the Death Star, who were isolated from external communications by Yoda's forethought and security measures, remained loyal and unaffected by Order 66, because the Order had no way of reaching them. This provided a sliver of hope amidst the despair, and recognizing the necessity of bringing the incomplete but effective ballast station directly to Sidious's doorstep, Yoda gave the command to prepare for a hyperspace jump directly to Coruscant. Inside the Death Star's bridge, Yoda watched as operators.
You say you'll never join the Navy. Never track storms in the Atlantic. Or skydive as part of your commute. Joining the Navy sounds crazy. Saying never actually is. Learn why at Navy.com. America's Navy. Forged by the sea.
Suggested their stations. The atmosphere thick with a mix of tension and resolve. As the final coordinates were set, the jump to hyperspace was initiated. The transition from the remote reaches of the unknown regions to the bustling center of the galaxy was jarring. Space stretched and then snapped back like a taut string, pulling the massive structure through the cosmos at unimaginable speeds. Yoda observed Coruscant from the bridge of the Death Star, the command center around him humming with the restrained urgency of a warship on alert. The viewports showed Yoda the vast expanse of Coruscant cityscape, a tapestry of endless lights and towering structures that spoke of immense power and deep-rooted civilization. Yet, beneath this facade of brilliance and order, Yoda sensed a rot festering at its core. A dark presence, a shadow that had infiltrated the highest echelons of the Republic. Closing his eyes, Yoda extended his senses beyond the metallic confines of the Death Star, reaching out with the Force towards the planet below. He saw the genesis of the threat, not merely to the Jedi but to the galaxy itself. His mind, honed by centuries of meditation and conflict, navigated through the ethereal currents of the Force until he felt the oppressive weight of darkness concentrated in a specific locale, the Republic Executive Building, where the official office and residency of the Supreme Chancellor was located. And it was there, in the opulent chambers and shadowed house of power, that Darth Sidious, the Sith Lord, had woven his deceitful web. Yoda could feel Sidious's malevolent gaze, almost looking back at him through the Force. a confirmation of the Sith's ascendancy within the crumbling edifice of the Republic, a Republic Yoda had vowed to protect but now realized he had failed to mend. The situation was dire. With each passing moment, the potential for Sidious to escape or further entrench his power grew. Yoda's mind raced with the moral calculus of the decision before him. The Death Star, while still incomplete, could not destroy a whole planet, but it was still more than powerful enough to destroy structures such as the Republic Executive Building. Such an act could decisively end Sidious's reign and avert a galaxy-spanning catastrophe, yet the cost of innocent lives that would be lost in the strike weighed heavily on Yoda's conscience. Yoda again closed his eyes, reaching deep into the Force, seeking clarity and wisdom. The Force flowed around him and through him, its currents murky with turmoil yet shimmering with strands of hope. In this moment of introspection, Yoda grappled with the Jedi's core principles. The Jedi were guardians of peace and justice, sworn to protect life, not to take it prematurely, especially the lives of innocents. Yet, the dark reality remained. Failing to act might allow Sidious to continue his dark agenda, possibly leading to the destruction of the Jedi and untold suffering across the galaxy under the Sith rule that would follow under Sidious. The weight of potential futures pressed upon Yoda's shoulders, a burden no single being should bear, yet one he must carry. Yoda then considered using the Death Star to simply threaten Sidious, possibly coercing him into halting his purge and releasing his grip on the galaxy. However, Yoda recognized the Sith Lord's cunning. Threatening Sidious with an incomplete Death Star, vulnerable to a concentrated attack, might only serve to grant Sidious time to escape and launch a counter-assault, using the extensive resources of the galaxy, which Sidious by this point had at his disposal. Thus, Yoda concluded that making peace with the Death Star was not a viable strategy. Yoda also realized that any further delay in action could lead not only to the destruction of this nascent weapon, but also to the potential downfall of the Jedi and further consolidation of Sidious's dark rule. Every moment Yoda hesitated allowed Sidious more time to fortify his sinister plans and extend his malevolent reach across the galaxy. Yoda knew this. And on top of that, Yoda could also sense the many Jedi dying across the galaxy, their lights fading like dying stars. But he had the power to stop all this. And Yoda told himself, with much regret, that the good of the many outweighed the good of the few. And with the situation's gravity finally settling in fully, the Grand Master's determination solidified. He then opened his eyes, which now reflected a firm resolve. Turning to the navigational officer, who stood by in a disciplined silence, Yoda issued his command in a soft yet assertive tone. "Set coordinates for a micro-jump, Commander," he directed with precision. "Directly over the executive building. Position us," Yoda said. And it was at this point that Sidious had sensed and seen the Death Star in Coruscant's night sky. As Sidious observed the Death Star's imposing silhouette against the backdrop of Coruscant's night sky, his initial unease quickly spiraled into fear. As the structure, a distant and seemingly harmless presence moments prior, had now moved closer in a quiet, unsettling speed. A speed that the human mind couldn't even register. One moment it was far away, another, it was extremely close, making no sound as it did so. The stars dimmed, obscured by the Death Star's massive form, which now dominated the skyline, aligning its formidable cone directly with the Sith Lord's location. Realizing the severity of the threat, Sidious hissed under his breath, panic seeping into his voice as he urgently contacted Mas Amedda. "Prepare my shuttle for immediate departure," he commanded. And then, as Sidious turned to flee, a deep, ominous tone filled the air, a sound so profound it vibrated through the very foundations of the city. Sidious paused, then slowly turned around to look back at the Death Star. And as he did so, Sidious witnessed green lights begin to illuminate the Death Star's cone. The lights then grew intensely bright, converging into a singular, powerful beam aimed directly at Sidious's location. The sight of the charging super laser was paralyzing, and as the beam surged forward in a blinding flash of green, Sidious understood that the rule of two would indeed end with him. So moments prior to this, Yoda stood on the Death Star with a composed yet heavy heart. As the final preparations were made to the super weapon, she reviewed the activation protocols with the crew. "System checks complete, Master Yoda. All systems are initiated. We await your orders," a clone officer reported, his voice echoing slightly in the cold, stark chamber. Yoda paused, his small figure almost engulfed by the vastness of the command center. His eyes, deep and thoughtful, reflected the turmoil within. The Force whispered of the many lives intersecting at this pivotal moment. The innocents who would be caught in the turmoil and the guilty whose deeds had led them there. Yoda's hands rested slightly on the console, a physical connection that grounded his wavering spirit. He took a deep, measured breath, his mind racing with the implications of the next few moments. This act, though aimed at ending the dire threat, contradicted the Jedi's deepest teachings. Yet, the shadows of the dark side loomed large, and decisive action was necessary. Yoda's voice, when it finally came, was steady yet laden with the weight of his decision. "Fire when ready, you may, Commander," Yoda instructed solemnly. And at this command, the clone troopers engaged the super laser. The technical orchestration was precise. Energy gathered from the core, channeled through conduits that pulsed with power. The beam, when it finally fired, was a concentrated column of destructive energy, meticulously calibrated to minimize collateral damage while ensuring the destruction of the Republic Executive Building. Yoda stood silently, watching the beam streak across the space between the Death Star and Coruscant. The targeting was flawless, the execution impeccable. As the beam struck, the building was engulfed in a blinding explosion, the structure disintegrating under the force of the impact. The old Jedi Master felt a tremor through the force as the building vaporized. The lives within it extinguished in an instant. The dark shadow of Sidious flickered and then faded from perception, his end as sudden as it was absolute. In the days and weeks that followed, several things happened. For one, using the Death Star, Yoda convinced the Security Council to halt Order 66, and they did so. And the Purge of the Jedi, galaxy-wide, ended, just as abruptly as it had begun. Following this, Yoda sent out a transmission, galaxy-wide, telling everyone in the galaxy that Palpatine was truly Sidious and had orchestrated the Clone Wars by playing both sides from the beginning. As evidence of this, Yoda went over the long history of the Jedi and the Sith, and how Sidious was a Sith Lord. But being a Sith alone wasn't illegal, and most people across the galaxy didn't even know what a Sith was by this point. But Yoda also went over the plot behind the inhibitor chips within the brains of every single clone, which forced them to turn on the Jedi upon Sidious's command. And to add further grounds to this, Yoda also made the Kaminoans essentially testify before the galaxy that the inhibitor chips were supplied to them by a man called Tyrannus, who they had falsely believed was a Jedi. So, side note, the Kaminoans had always believed that Dooku or Tyrannus was just another Jedi, and that the inhibitor chips were meant to make sure the clones could go after a rogue Jedi if need be, not for the clones to destroy every single Jedi. So the Kaminoans would testify to this, that they were under the false belief that Tyrannus or Count Dooku was a Jedi. And this helped convince a good part of the galaxy that the Clone Wars was orchestrated by the Sith, which Tyrannus was. And it was also by this point that the Jedi as well realized that Sidious and Tyrannus was in league with each other, and that Dooku was never planning on building the Death Star to oppose Sidious, but to aid him. But that didn't matter anymore, Sidious was dead. And as for Dooku, he was also still alive. And upon realizing how his own carelessness had led to the destruction of the Revenge of the Sith, Dooku too told the galaxy that he believed the Jedi and the Republic to have been corrupt, and that the Sith would have brought order, but that now all of that had been wasted. So essentially, when all this was said and done, a good part of the galaxy did come to believe that the Jedi were innocent, and that Palpatine wanted to take over the galaxy essentially. And as for the Jedi Order itself, well, with Sidious gone and the Security Council calling off Order 66, the Purge ended, and many Jedi, the ones that survived, returned to Coruscant, including Ahsoka Tano, who even in this timeline had gone after Maul, and had survived Order 66. And then following this, the Separatist leaders, realizing how their command structure had been completely destroyed with Sidious and Grievous gone, and with the Jedi now possessing some kind of planet-destroying superweapon, they figured that their best hope for survival was to seek for peace with the Republic. And so they did. So shortly thereafter, the Clone Wars had come.
At the point when your enemy has a massive planet-killing weapon, yeah, I would surrender peace treaty now.
To an end. And a galaxy-wide operation was ordered to remove the inhibitor chips from the clones, so that they're no longer a threat to the Jedi or anyone else. And as for the Death Star itself, Yoda had instructed it to be taken back to the unknown regions, where its construction still kept going on. The reason why Yoda thought it wise to do that was that he figured that there were still many in the galaxy and even in the higher echelons of the Republic that believed that the Jedi were in the wrong, and that should the need arise, the Jedi might need the Death Star again. So Yoda decided to keep the weapon as a deterrent, just in case. But as for Yoda himself, he did not hide away in the Death Star in the unknown regions. Instead, after putting Mace Windu in charge of the Death Star, Yoda formally surrendered his position as the Grand Master of the Jedi Order, and then he subjected himself to legal prosecution by the Republic, because even though Yoda's goals were noble, he did end the lives of many people in the Republic Executive Building. many of whom were
Yeah.
innocent. And so the trial of Master Yoda, or just Yoda, began, and it was broadcasted galaxy-wide over the HoloNet. This trial was subject to much debate, and it seemed as though it would go on for a very long time before a sentence can be issued. But as for the Republic itself, it began functioning again, this time in alliance with the Separatists, whose many peace agreements the Republic had agreed to. And so in this timeline, the revenge of the Sith was foiled, thanks to Yoda building a Death Star. So what do you think
Come
would happen?
on.
Would there be some kind of a rebellion against the Jedi? And if it did happen, would the Jedi end up taking over the Republic using their super weapon? Anyways, that is it for the video. If you liked it, do consider leaving a like
very
and
nice.
subscribing if you haven't already. And do check out my Patreon if you have the time, where for $1 or more a month you can get some stuff. Anyways, do check that out if you have the time, and goodbye. Stay hydrated and have an awesome rest of the day.
Yep. And bye for now. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And I'll put the channel in the description below, so you can check out the original video for yourself. And don't forget to check out my reaction playlist too, to see more of my reactions like this one. Bye for now. And I'll see you guys next time. See ya. Do this.